the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua. And today's question is: can AI really transform every manager into a great manager? Well, that's quite, we love questions like that. We love, business efficiency, especially when it comes to AI. We love talking about that on this show. Then we have the perfect guest to answer that question today. Projjal Ghatak founded Onloop with the mission of converting every manager in the world into a great manager. They've been building Gen AI native tech since 2021, and their proprietary collaborative team development (CTD) approach and platform is revolutionizing management and leadership in the world's best creative agencies. You're talking about BBH, We Are Social, Ultra Super New, and technology companies like Beyond Meat, Fermat, and Tazza Pay. Projal developed his passion for organizational effectiveness to drive business outcomes at Uber, Accenture strategy, and getting his MBA at Stanford. He is a proud naturalized Singaporean, Singapore Management University scholar, and a World Economic Forum technology pioneer. And today, I am very excited. He's going to share about his experience, his insights, and his wisdom. Well, JJ, I can call you JJ, right? Thank you for coming on the
JJ is
show.
good.
How are you
Thanks,
doing?
Joshua. Thank you for having me. I'm good.
well,
Thank you.
well, it's great. Jay, we had a little talk earlier about this. You're talking that you've been to the Philippines. You've also are a naturalized Singaporean as well, and you have come a long way. I mean, you experienced from Uber, Accenture, and all that. What inspired you to get to OnLoop? But before we get
Mm.
into that, what is the story of Prajal? What is the story of JJ? As a child, did you always know you were going to get into technology? What is the origin story?
The short answer to that is absolutely not. And I'm actually dialing in from my family's home in Calcutta, in India, where I grew up. So it's a fitting question given the location. But frankly, I did not grow up in an entrepreneurial household, and I grew up in a household where the model was, my mom was a homemaker, my dad was an HR professional, actually, ironically enough.
Mhm.
We lived a middle class salaried existence, and my sister was incredibly studious. Is now an accomplished doctor and went to med school at 16. And so the focus on academics as well as sort of intellectual rigor was something that was ingrained into me very early on. But both sort of being an entrepreneur and especially being a technology entrepreneur was not something I grew around, and is not something sort of I necessarily had insight into. But I think one of the
Uh-huh.
things that sort of was sort of quite prevalent in my household was
Uh-huh.
sort of challenging status quo
Right.
and sort of thinking about problems from a first principles perspective,
Mm.
and really sort of trying to understand the world better
Right.
versus sort of existing passively, which I think are all sort of ingredients that end up sort of leading to an entrepreneurial career. But I did not necessarily have entrepreneurial role models.
Well, that is quite the path that you have undertaken. It feels to me like there's always curiosity in the family. There was always curiosity bound, running it in your blood. And Prajal went into, you got experience, you driving business, you outcomes at Uber, Accenture. How did you get into this opportunity, and how did you get into the business side of things, and eventually
Mm,
inspiring you to found
mm,
On Loop? What was the
mm.
transition there?
Yeah, so when I went to Stanford Business School to do my MBA in
Hmm.
2012, there's a flagship essay around what matters most to you and why.
Right.
And I wrote about the pursuit of success and happiness of myself and those around me,
Oh.
and sort of how sort of thinking about for-profit impact enterprises was the right vehicle to drive social change in the world. And so I would say Stanford was probably the first sort of step towards thinking about doing something entrepreneurially. But I actually did not have the financial ability to start a business and not take a salary for a while, for a few years. And sort of the first time I had that opportunity was when Uber IPO'd in 2019, and I had a few thousand stocks in the company, which meant that I could financially support myself for 6 to 12 months, until sort of the business raised
Hmm.
money or was able to take off. And so,
Interesting.
and I was single at the time. I did not sort of have a ton of other financial obligations. So I felt
Uh-huh.
like there was a window of opportunity, in which if I wanted to sort of do something very risky, and start an enterprise, that would be the perfect time. And so, that's how sort of Onloop was born, post my exit from Uber,
Right.
right after the Uber IPO, and right before the pandemic, and right before hybrid work really became a thing that has
Yep.
been
Yep.
a huge tailwind for us as a
Hmm.
business.
Hmm.
But Onloop was born more from my frustrations, with sort of both talent acquisition and management
There you
practices,
go.
that I was subject to, as a manager and leader. And
Uh-huh.
I frankly hated every tool and every approach that I experienced. And we decided to sort of rethink goals and feedback from scratch, and rethink
Right.
it from the lens of a manager,
Hmm.
and a CEO, not
Hmm.
from the lens of an HR manager,
There you go.
because the approaches that you take when you think about it from an end user lens is very different,
Precisely.
than the functional lens. And sort of, the way Uber sort of revolutionized taxis and changed
Yes.
how people got from point A to point B. Our
Hmm.
enemy is performance management, and the entire
Yes.
category of performance management, and how terribly it's done by every performance management product in the world, and ushering in a new way of doing goals and feedback that's much more frictionless, that's much more sort of magical for managers and leaders.
I love it. I love that you seem to have been part of two major aspects of um, a pre-pandemic industry that also blew up post-pandemic, right? Because we're talking about
Mm,
Uber in the sense that it really blew up right after the pandemic. Everyone was using it. I think it's when I feel like Uber Eats started really becoming a thing because everyone needed
yeah,
their deliveries and everything.
delivery.
You
Yeah.
were, excuse me, you were a part of that prior to that blowing
Mm,
up in Uber, and you talked about these frictions of seeing things as an HR, as a leader, performance management, and now you bring that same frustrations to On Loop, but this was pre-pandemic, and you blew up
mm,
right around the pandemic, which is perfect time because now everything's online, and I understand that
yeah.
On Loop utilizes what you call CTD, it's proprietary
Mm,
collaborative
mm,
team development. And the approach
mm,
utilizes generative AI. And that is
mm,
quite the unique aspect of OnLoop and a very, very
mm,
interesting part of it. Could you talk to me about the specific differences of working with the friction that you experience at Uber and working
mm,
now
mm,
with the with OnLoop
mm,
prior to the pandemic
mm,
and after the pandemic?
mm. So thank you for bringing that up. And there are two things that, generally when we talk to companies to stand out, is that
Right.
one, our CTD framework hopes to demystify the job of a manager.
Mm,
And in most organizations, we keep hearing people don't leave companies; they leave bad managers,
mm,
and being a good manager is very hard to
mhm.
do. And actually, most things are not rocket science.
Yes.
It goes back to, have we taken a sort of product approach to it to simplify it? And
Right.
what good what good products are able to do is take incredibly complex topics and simplify them, right? So I tell
Hmm.
people that the Google search bar is the world's most complex product in terms of what's happening behind the scenes, but it is completely dummy brief to use because everybody knows what to
Yes.
type in that one bar, right? So there's
Absolutely.
no way you can mess that up. And that's the art of building good product is
Right.
sort of how do you abstract away the complexity. And so we took the same approach to the job of a manager, right?
Right.
And sort of the CDD framework and approach breaks down the job of a manager
Right.
into five hierarchical layers of
Wow.
needs that every team member has.
Oh.
At the base of it is understanding each person's motivation or energy. So if someone's not energized or motivated, no matter what you do, that's not going to make someone productive. So for every manager to understand that at the foundation is huge. The second is being very, very clear on the person's goals. And there's been a lot of work around goal management for companies. And so OKRs and KPIs and MBOs and other frameworks that have helped companies manage goals. But they've done a very, very bad job to help individuals manage goals and help those goals cascade down effectively down from company to team to individual.
Right.
And so in our product, we break down goals into targets, projects, and skills that helps much more easily quantify what each person is doing.
There you go.
The two layers on top of that are two feedback layers. So celebrate feedback and improve feedback. And
Wow.
actually, improve constructive feedback is the fourth layer, which only starts mattering if someone's motivated, their goals are
Right.
clear, they
Right.
understand what their superpowers are. Only then does constructive feedback actually help. Many managers try to sort of go to constructive feedback first when they see a bad performer, but actually you have to first check if the person's
Yes.
motivated, are they clear on what they're working
Yes.
on,
Yes.
do they know what they're good at
Uh huh.
before sort of doing constructive feedback. And then finally the last and fifth layer is sort of driving continuous personalized growth. So unlocking content or tips to help people grow based on sort of their specific skill goals or sort of pieces of feedback that they sort of might have received or have. And
I,
so using that framework, we can break down the job of a manager, and then using generative AI, we can take people's unstructured observations and help break it down into those five layers. So
yes.
so most human beings don't have a problem on sort of in an unstructured manner thinking about what am I trying to achieve,
Right.
or how do I feel, or what are my team members good at. They have those as unstructured observations. What they're then not able to do is convert that to structured feedback or
Right.
goals or an understanding
Okay.
of energy levels or content tips to grow. And so
hmm
we can then take people's unstructured input, and that can be sort of what we call active input. So it can be a voice recording
Wow.
or
Okay.
unstructured notes, or it can be passive inputs. It can be a recording of a of a conference call, or it can be email threads or Slack messages. And we tend to not use a lot of passive input because passive input kills psychological safety in a product. And so we focus on the active input more than the passive
Yes. Of
input.
course. Of
But
course.
essentially, that unstructured input can come from anywhere,
Oh yeah.
and then we can use large language models to help structure and
Wow.
simplify and build those things out.
And that's it's a very very efficient way to go about it as well, using large language models, like putting together keywords, putting together the common phrases, especially active feedback is that's why active feedback is very crucial to this, because it
Mm,
allows you guys to put together the data in a very efficient way.
correct.
I love how you framed it as like people leave bad managers, but also it's more as if like the demystifying the role of a manager. People really don't know what they're going to manage, right? Or
Correct.
oftentimes there's
Correct.
always that's why middle managers are so unpopular, right? You're kind of
Yes.
just like the guy in between the top guys, and you're in that situation where who do I please, the people I'm managing, or the people who are managing me? So it's very difficult, and I love how you demystified all that in the sense that, okay, this is a role, these are the functions, hierarchical, very simple, and we're going to use AI to help us. We're going to use
Yes.
AI to manage and create more effective leaders. Could you share to us
Yes.
some experiences and some insights and the difference between what you experienced over at Uber and maybe Accenture that shaped your really the goal to to make management more efficient and
Mm.
organizational effectiveness in that area. Could you talk to us a bit about that difference there and the difference now that you have with OnLoop?
Yeah, so one of the things, just to address that question, I'll touch on is that if, I often see people use three words somewhat interchangeably. So the
Okay.
word leader,
Okay.
the word manager, and the word coach.
Oh,
And actually, they all mean very different things.
very different
And
things.
and to be an effective senior executive at a corporation or a
Okay.
growing company,
Right.
you need to be all three, right? To
Mm,
do
yes.
that well. But some
Yes.
people are better at one versus the other. So for me, I'm a better leader than a manager. And a leader's job is essentially to inspire, right? To get
Yes.
people to follow a direction or a
Hmm.
movement or a change agenda in the world.
Hmm.
So at Stanford
Hmm.
Business School, the flagship question was, why should someone follow you? What
Right.
is what is specifically unique or distinctive to you that would then allow you to build a followership? Because
Hmm.
leading is about building followership. Whether you're leading a country or leading a charity or
Yes.
leading a startup
Yes.
or leading a school, whatever you might be,
Yes.
essentially it's about getting people to follow you
Yes.
and follow sort of your direction. The job of a manager is to take the resources given to them to achieve a particular task. And actually, you can be a really good manager and a really crappy leader, or vice versa,
Yes. Of
right?
course. Yes. Of
And
course.
actually, when people talk about this person's a visionary leader, or they like think outside the box, what they really mean is the person's
Yeah.
a good leader, a really bad manager, because they can't
Yes.
actually sort of
You
really
can
sort of
just say it.
operationalize the pieces.
Yeah.
And then the third is being a coach, which
Yeah.
is the art of asking good questions.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I coach a few CEOs, and my job in those sessions is actually not to advise or not to mentor, but is to ask the right questions to help the other person get insights from within themselves, which is
Hmm.
sort of what a good therapist would do, or sort of an executive coach would do. But that's the art of coaching, right?
Right.
And those three are very specific things, but because there's so much leadership books and self-help books and management books and there's so much content and literature out there, it becomes this overwhelming blob
Hmm.
of information. And I
Yes.
and the best analogy I use is health and being healthy. And 5 or 10 years ago, being healthy was equally a blob, right? But now when people talk about longevity, it's about diet, sleep, and exercise,
Right.
right? Those are the three primary inputs into sort of your health and longevity. And then
Yes.
you can do certain blood tests, etc., to then understand sort of on certain key indicators where you lie.
Of
But the
course.
way to drive intervention
Hmm.
is diet, sleep, exercise, right?
Of course. Of course.
Um, and so for me, I've had the benefit of going to the world's best business school. I've worked at the largest consulting company in the world. I've
Hmm.
worked at one of the pioneering tech companies of my generation. Like,
Hmm.
I've been able to sort of work in a lot of different places,
Yes.
and not just places, but also interact with a lot of different people
Yes.
and approaches. And what Uber was very good at was to inspire action and change. And so Travis Kalanick, who founded Uber, was an amazing leader to inspire all of us to sort of work like dogs towards the mission of a safe, reliable, affordable ride in every country in the world, right?
Hmm.
And providing millions of drivers access to flexible
Hmm.
wages, and
Yeah.
that those were very large missions to go
Hmm.
after, and that meant breaking the law in certain countries and really taking on governments and regulators because the mission was worthwhile.
Hmm.
And then B, we really respected the people we worked with, and
Yeah.
so some of my best friends, some of my investors, some of my colleagues, some of my customers have all come from that Uber network. So Uber, very much like Stanford or other affiliations, is a membership, right? And that membership sort of puts people together. But what I've come away from all of it is that ultimately, if you want to do hard things in the world,
Hmm.
you need to have deep belief in the mission, and you need
Right.
to deeply love the people that you do it with. Times get really tough. Those are the two things that you fall back upon to sort of re-inspire you or sort of re-energize you, because every entrepreneurship journey is long and tough.
Right.
Um, and there are inevitably tough times, and inevitably times when you get super challenged, and what prevents you from giving up um, essentially ends up becoming the mission and the people.
Precisely. I love how you put together. I love how you cleared that up. Manager, leader, coach, and it's very important to have that very clear because we kind of tend to mix everything up. And like you
Yes,
said, if you're an executive, we feel like everything has to be. I mean, you have to be able to do everything, but at the same time, you have strengths, you have
totally.
weaknesses, right?
Yes,
So
totally,
you're
totally.
strong. You're strong in some parts. It's funny how you said
Yeah,
managers can be good leaders, but leaders can't be good managers sometimes. But more than that, I love how you put it around and said that okay, managers, leaders, coach, but you've tied it all up because at the end of the day, what really matters is the team, the
hmm
collaboration.
hmm
Because then you
hmm
need that support around you. Because
hmm
regardless of what your strengths are, at the end of the day, you can't do it alone, right?
I
And I
agree.
feel
I
that
agree.
is the core of what you do at Onloop, with especially with your proprietary CTD. It's literally that name, collaborative team development. What has been the most surprising impact of Onloop's platform that you yourself probably didn't expect when you started
Mm,
this? With all the
mm.
companies you've worked with, what would be a story that stands out to you the most?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for us is sort of the emergence of actually creative agencies as a core customer segment that is very, very talent obsessed
Wow.
and really cares about developing the people. Everybody
Mhm.
knew that we would work with tech companies, work with governments, work with sort of venture and private equity backed companies, but I'd never really thought about creative agencies as a core sector for us. And sort of Sid Tully,
Interesting.
who leads BBH in APAC, Akansha Goel, who leads We're Social in UAE. I've had the pleasure of really understanding how these MDs or GMs are very focused on sort of the betterment of their people, and
Hmm.
how does the business drive productivity from its largest cost center, which is its people.
Hmm.
Um, I would have expected consulting companies to actually be more sort of a low hanging fruit. But what I've seen with consulting companies is that they tend to have bureaucratic processes that need to be ripped out. Versus in creative agencies, because they hate bureaucracy so much, they haven't really sort of put much in place. So you can go in and sort of start from a fresh slate. But I think for me, what's been very, very impactful is that most people in HR will tell you, oh, the business leader doesn't care about the people. They're assholes. They only care about the profits. It's sort of, you have to fight against them to do right by the people.
Right.
I've actually not experienced that at all, right?
Oh,
It's just that they speak a different language, and
yeah.
their language is around results and output.
Right. Of
The
course.
language isn't soft and fuzzy and feel
Yes, of
good.
course.
But ultimately, what I am out to increase in the world is the productivity of global knowledge workers, right?
Wow.
And that is the output that I'm out to sort of change. And that's why every time we've thought about our product and our approach, it needs to deliver real business results.
Mm,
And if it
mm.
doesn't deliver real business results, people are not going to care.
That's it. That's
And
it.
and I think that when it comes to sales and marketing,
Hmm.
it's easier to link back interventions that you make to business results.
Wow.
It is harder to do that around people and productivity.
I love that.
And but that's on the practitioners to prove that,
Of
right?
course.
I can't blame away the problem to someone else. If I'm in the
Mhm.
business of improving people and productivity, I need to make sure that my counterparty feels the impact of real results.
Wow.
Um, and it's my job to innovate around that problem, not to blame it on someone else. But often I find people in incumbents who've been doing things over and again, they're like, oh, nobody understands us, or they don't get it, or
Hmm.
it's not how it's done. But frankly, if you're to drive change, it's your job to prove why it's better.
I love that.
And if you can't do that, that's a failure on you. That's not a failure on the audience.
Wow. I love that. I love how I love that concept now that you told us. But how do you envision AI improving that? What? How did
Yeah,
AI come into that picture? And you know, with envisioning the future of AI in management and leadership, how did that affect it?
yeah. I feel like that's another
Right.
that's
Exactly. It's
another
so complete.
conversation
Exactly.
on
Mhm.
its own. However, so again, AI is a complicated word, right? So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and what's brought AI to the mainstream is the concept of generative AI
Hmm. Hmm.
through large language models,
Yes.
right? There's an entire other field of AI that's been mainstream for a very long time, which is predictive AI, right? Which
Predictive
is
AI. Yes. Yes.
when I log into Instagram, what does Instagram show me next, right? And sort of companies like Meta have been sort of pioneers in predictive AI
Yes. Hmm.
for a very long time. What generative AI was able to do was bring the power of AI to the mass consumer through a very
Precisely.
easy interface called ChatGPT, and that sort of brought sort
Hmm.
of AI to the forefront of sort of everyone's day to day.
Right.
But essentially, if you think about management and leadership, it is largely a language art. It's art of communication. And what large language models are is that they're a triple PhD in English, right?
Mm.
And they can give everybody massive eloquent superpowers and
Mm.
and allow you to gather insights and add structure to sort of unstructured chaos.
Right.
And so we're always going to rely on humans to make judgment calls,
Hmm.
and we're always going to rely on humans to make observations.
Right.
But between those two things, all of that can be added structure,
Of course.
knowledge,
Of course.
reporting through
Hmm.
better AI. And, you know,
Hmm.
we've built now a way to help AI
Mm.
assess people and to
Wow.
do performance ratings based on a standardized set of observations across companies. And frankly, one of the biggest frustration of organizational leaders is that their best people leave because of bad managers. Because your success in an organization is so much dependent on the quality of your manager. And the
Hmm.
quality of a manager is not always in your control. So
Hmm.
now, if we can take the quality of the manager away from the equation of talent retention, that is hugely productive for businesses in
Hmm.
terms of how they retain their very best people, irrespective of the quality of the manager. And you can do that now because AI is able to consistently understand everyone, right? So
Yes.
think about it
Yes.
as
Yes.
an AI manager, right, who understands observations from people and sort of synthesizes one-on-ones and understand what's going on
Yes. Yes.
as a common voice that exists across
Hmm.
every conversation versus sort of a good manager versus a bad manager. So what I tell people is for companies that have managers today, we
Right.
are a we're a manager co-pilot, right?
Mm.
And so we're there to enable existing managers. But if a company is starting from scratch and scaling out, we might even recommend not having managers, but having AI be the manager.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
and sort of AI being the person that manages teams of 5 to 8 people.
Right.
And then human managers sort of manage 20 or 30-person teams. Right? So
Wow.
in the same way that you have level one customer service done by AI and level two customer service done by a human, you can have a similar tiering in managers whereby, you know, the first time manager is replaced by an AI manager. And
Mm.
then sort of there are human managers then manage a team of AI managers managing individuals. So, you know, I think that what AI is going to do is sort of ask every business leader, am I better off hiring, I don't know, a semi-qualified human to do this,
Yep.
or am I better off getting AI to do it? Because
Precisely.
the best human will always be better than AI at most things.
Of course.
But
Right.
AI will be better than the average human.
Of course. Of course. I love
and
that.
and and people talk about AI replacing jobs. What AI will do is it will replace expensive mediocre workers,
Yep. Yep. I
but it's
agree.
not going to replace really high quality people in sort of say developing countries, which is why I'm very bullish on top talent in emerging markets like the Philippines or Vietnam or Bangladesh or India or Pakistan,
Of course.
because those talents with the power of Gen AI will be impossible to beat.
Absolutely. And they will be it almost helps you weed out the ones that are truly irreplaceable, the ones that are truly
Correct.
indispensable, because you've taken out the elements where you weed out again the expensive mediocre work, and now you're actually finding the real talent, the real gem in all of that pool of workers through the help of AI filtering. Basically, it's an AI upon AI of managers stacked up on each other, so you are
Yeah,
able to find the best of the best. JJ,
totally.
that is quite the innovation and quite the movement that you are leading, and I love it. That what you do with Onloop. I want to give you this opportunity now, JJ. Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? Where can we learn more about Onloop?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about Onloop, our website's onloop.com or
Mm-hmm.
onloop.ai. It gets you to the same place. And the platform that I spend the most of my time on is on LinkedIn. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I will definitely read your message. I don't always have the option to respond to every message, but I do read every message that shows up in my LinkedIn mailbox. It's better than email. Email's worse because email is even more spammy. LinkedIn's spammy too, but it's a little less spammy than email is.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I have just sent a connection request to JJ Projjal Ghatak over on LinkedIn. Ladies and gentlemen, to our audience and listeners out there as well, send over a connection request to JJ. Get connected, get to know more about what they do, what he does with OnLoop. JJ, thank you for coming on the show.
No, you're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
I love it. I mean, I love the concept. I love everything that you've shared to us today, and I hope our audience and listeners get the same value and enjoy this as much as I did.
No, thank you.
Fantastic to everyone who watched this episode. Thank you so much, JJ. Thank you so much, our audience and listeners. We are going to see you on the next one. Bye bye.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.